I submitted it when I heard about it from like a footer of a career email. I was actually in Tibet riding a yak when the news came out. I just got like email for the first time. So it said, hey, you're in.
Hello everyone, Ken here, back with another interview for you. Today I had the pleasure of speaking with Andrew from DataLeap. He's a data scientist and YouTuber who's providing a great resource for free industry education. He breaks down complex data science concepts with his own unique brand of comedy sprinkled in. You also get to enjoy some corgi time with his wonderful sidekick, Meatball. In college, Andrew was grinding for an 80-hour-a-week job as a management consultant. He actually had never written a line of code until his junior year. During his master's, when he found out about the great opportunities in data science, he was able to teach himself the skills and land a job in the field in just 6 months. Since then, he's bounced around a lot of industries, from cutting-edge startups to billion-dollar hedge funds and FAANG companies. Each time he swapped roles, he was able to increase his base compensation and the amount of freedom he had with his work. In this video, we'll talk about how he learned the skills, how he conquered the interview process, and maybe how you can follow along in his footsteps. After the video, if you want to learn more about Andrew, check out his YouTube channel, which I've linked in the description and pinned in the first comment. We also did a collab video on his channel, so if you want to learn some facts about me that you probably didn't know before, you can go check out that video there. Now on with the interview. All right, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on. You have such a cool background. You've also been doing some really awesome YouTube videos.
Would you go on a Netflix dating show as a contestant?
Ooh. No.
Flynn Rider does it when he goes like...
Oh yeah. I wanted to tell your story or be able to have this conversation to show your story to my audience, because I think they can really learn a lot from it. You combine such a cool storytelling aspect with data science, especially in your videos. I'm sure that translates over to your job. So I'd love to talk more about that, talk more about your experience going to grad school, talk more about your experience getting a job in Silicon Valley as a data scientist. But let's start with how you got interested in data science in the first place, and just a little bit more about yourself to give everyone some context.
Sure. Thank you, Ken, for having me. Really excited to talk to you guys about my journey so far. So my name is Andrew from DataLeap. Data science was not on my radar at all. So I actually come from a pre-med background. So my parents, the immigrant lifestyle is pushing you to either lawyer, engineer, or pre-med. But engineer was never on my parents' radar either. So technology was not a big thing in my household. So I was a PC kid all my life. You know, I barely understood how the internet worked. And when I got into college, I already had 3 pre-med internships under my belt. So ready to go into medical school. Like today, first day of freshman year of undergraduate. But when I started my journey of pre-med, it didn't make a ton of sense because I wanted to interact with people. I wanted to be able to tell narratives, and most people don't want to see how their kidneys are working. So what I started realizing was I could do the storytelling aspect from any job in any major. At least that's what I thought. I was going to the University of Chicago. So this was a very science theory heavy school. Junior year started picking up computer science. So that was very late in the game. I was like, can I double major? Is this even possible? When my school started a program specifically for people coming from a non-technical background who wanted to double up in a master's for computational analysis. I thought, that fits me to a T. It had a public policy bent. So it was originally meant for people to go into the policy world. And I thought that made perfect sense because I loved working in that space. It was basically a spark of my 2 joys, right? One would be working with people, delivering different kinds of narratives to different people of very different technological backgrounds, such as myself, and creatively engineering solutions that only a data scientist with a full stack understanding of coding would be able to perform both parts.
That's awesome. There's a lot to unpack there. I think one really interesting thing is that you went into data science for almost the opposite reason that a lot of people go into data science. You went into it because you wanted to tell stories. You wanted to have that connection with people. You wanted to be an authority that communicated your knowledge. A lot of people go into the technical careers because they believe that they don't have to talk to people or they can just work with the numbers all the time. And I think that there are roles where you can really weigh in very heavily on either one of those things. And there are some that are a perfect balance. And that's one thing I really like about data science, about consulting, about these different career paths, is that there is a lot of flexibility within the role. They're very open-ended. With medicine, so both of my parents are doctors. Both of their, my mom's dad, my dad's dad were both doctors. And both my great-grandparents, the male grandparents, were doctors. So I come from a long line of medical professionals. And I absolutely disappointed both my parents by breaking that trend. But they're very accepting. They're fine with what I do. I get my dad great golf tickets now, so he can't complain. But I digress. The thing about that is that the medical profession is very linear, right? There isn't a lot of wiggle room within what you can do. And I mean, it's a great profession, don't get me wrong. There's a huge need for doctors, and a lot of people get a lot of fulfillment by helping people. But the flexibility in the roles, the flexibility in the long-term upside of, let's say, like starting your own company, it's not equitable to software engineering or data science, because I can start my own company very easily as a data scientist. I have that skill set. I can kind of bend into different things. As a doctor, you go, like you become a physician or you specialize, or you go down these tracks where the expectations are very clear. What you're going to be doing is very clear. And I never did great with very explicit instructions in general. So, I like how you ended up, your story ended you up in this master's degree and going forward. Can you talk a bit more about that degree? I actually so I was talking to Tina last week or a couple weeks ago, and she did a very similar degree at UPenn. I did my degree at DePaul, where you don't have to have a technical background, and it's the introductory. And then they had a very similar degree at U Chicago. I'd love to hear that story. I'd love to hear if you felt like it was worth it, because I'm usually under the impression that you shouldn't necessarily do advanced degrees, but I'd love to hear you talk more on that.
That's a big shout out for U Chicago. I love how you talked about it with Tina. Kenji perspective at my school. That's exciting fact for me. I was a tour guide, so if I ever go back, that's what I'm going to say. That's a good question. I would say for me, it was paramount. It was really important because of the background I was coming from. I needed a fire lit under me, so it was a perfect match and made in heaven. And the way that I was accepted into that program, I submitted it when I heard about it from like a footer of a career email. I was actually in Tibet riding a yak when the news came out. I just got like email for the first time. So it said, hey, you're in. And University of Chicago, Stockholm Syndrome got to me in my heart. So I decided to stay. The reason why I think it's so important for my career track is that it brought me off of a slippery path of how undergraduate computer science is taught at most of these universities that focus on JavaScript, Java, C++, C. It brought me into Python. And when I first started my graduate degree, it was essentially, Python and R and working with Jupyter, working with the command line. These were just like very practical skills that I didn't really work on in the undergraduate time that I spent. And also it got me to work with actual projects. So I was a research assistant for two minor superhero economists at the University of Chicago. That got me real hands-on training with World Bank data, with Uber and Lyft data, with data I would never have been able to access in the undergraduate level, and practical experience I would never have been able to be connected with. And finally, the career office in the graduate level was really helpful. I actually worked as a career counselor my time there, and that connected me with my very first opportunity to work in the natural language processing space with a 100-person startup. The three reasons why I thought it was important for me was, one, I had a very theoretical understanding of computer science, that would not have compellingly helped my case as a data scientist. Two, I didn't have the right data sets and projects that would have supported my portfolio. And three, it gave me the opportunity to work in more advanced machine learning space in Chicago itself.
That's awesome. I think I spot a trend here just from talking to a bunch of people who have done advanced degrees. It seems like it really does make sense to do a master's degree if you're coming from a completely different discipline. It's really hard to break in and show credibility to the first employer without some experience there. I think if you're coming from a parallel field, you're coming from mechanical engineering, you're coming from electrical engineering, you're coming from computer science, you're coming from a very technical thing to begin with, you probably don't need to establish that credibility off the bat. But in the couple of experiences that I've had communicating with yourself and Tina, it seems like there is a need, or for some people, it does really make good sense. The other thing I'd like to point out is that both you and Tina did research, which I cannot stress the importance of. If you're doing one of these degrees, the only way or the best way to be successful with them is to capitalize on the research opportunities, potentially capitalize on the extra time that you have to get an internship or actual work experience, and use that time, use your coursework to build out your project portfolio. I think that, for me, I got really lucky that a lot of my courses had like project experience built in. They were project-based learning. And that's what I got asked about in every single interview I had. People asked about my coursework. They didn't ask about the degree. They asked about, oh, I saw you took this course. And then they asked about, okay, I saw you did this project. This is really cool. How can it help our company? I'd love to hear you touched on it a little bit, especially with the research, but I'm very interested in how you got your first job out of this program, what that process was like, and just anything you think would be interesting to the consumers here.
Sure. So I was lucky enough to jump directly into a FAANG company in Silicon Valley, pretty fresh out of my degree. I was before that working with a, like I said, natural language processing startup. It was around 100 so people. They wanted to consider that themselves still a startup in Chicago. From there, I worked in a hedge fund. So that was my opportunity to be basically 1 out of 4 data people. That was interesting because suddenly we were the only 4 people with the domain expertise in that field. And the way that I was able to get that position was just a copious amount of research on how to turn on the fire hose of the application process. In Chicago, I realized it's a very different process than Silicon Valley, but back then I couldn't really rely on my student portal. So that's my advice to students, is that if you have Handshake, if you have your school's very own career portal, that's going to be a lot harder. Students have a very hard time differentiating themselves. I had a really hard time differentiating myself. What I was able to do was get on the LinkedIn grind, the Glassdoor grind, AngelList grind, and jumping into those websites gave me the opportunity to stand out because nobody else from my university was applying in those specific areas. And maybe from tens of thousands of people, you're going down to a dozen people. So that got me seen a lot easier because suddenly you're working with adults and people from very different disciplines and different schools. If you think you're going to a great school, and all of you are going to great schools in their own respect, but if you have that competitive edge, then go outside of your very close centroid of peers.
That's awesome. I think that that's a very different way to look at it than I've personally thought about it before. It's that you should go to where you have the most notoriety, the most recognition, where you stand out the most. And I think that that's, it can be going against the grain. But for example, if I were to apply on LinkedIn, I would have a huge advantage because I have a pretty big LinkedIn following. If someone else were to apply via LinkedIn, they might have no advantage at all. And it might be the opposite, where if you're a real standout at your university, like you're the best student in whatever department, you applying through the university portal, you'll stand out because you're so much better compared to everyone else. So to me, I find that very fascinating, where it's like, hey, find the the job opportunities or the platform or the portal or whatever it is that gives you the most advantage, that allows you to differentiate yourself. If you're on Kaggle, right? If you have a really strong profile, if you have a lot of background, if you've done really good projects and you stand out there ready, go to the job board there. I don't think people realize that there's a job board, but you should work to your strengths all the time. And our strengths are very different in very different areas, right? Me going on Glassdoor would probably be a waste of time because one thing that really helps me out now is a personal brand, is some like outside recognition. Me not leveraging that would be pretty foolish if I was 100% trying to land a job these days. So I love that angle. Again, that's not something I've had initial experience with. So I'd love to kind of turn things to your experience working in the Bay Area. So how did that come about? What was the interview process like? How was that different from working at a hedge fund in Chicago?
Sure. So the interview process involved a blank resume drop. The FAANG company I'm talking about has, a standard process of putting posts on LinkedIn, on Glassdoor, on Monster, and then seeing what comes in. They somehow filtered through my resume, and then I had to actually leave I was taking PhD courses in sound technology and how Alexa speaks and how you understand their speech patterns. And I had to leave the classroom to take these calls with the recruiter. The initial calls were always an extended airport test. Can you stand this person for a layover that was unexpected for 10 hours or 12 hours at a time? At this point is your opportunity to stand out because you're able to talk about experiences where you're able to step out of the boundaries. Right now, as a student, you're probably talking a lot about how you were able to do your job really well. You're playing rules that are written out for you that you didn't agree to, right? You have the opportunity to stand out if you talk about ways that you connected the product design team with the software engineering team. If you were able to get the attention of the C-suite or a senior vice president and pitch them an idea. If you got some sort of material in front of someone, and then you're able to create lasting impact at a specific company, that is what you should talk about for your very first 1 or 2 interviews. So after those 2 interviews, I stopped talking to an HR person, a recruiter, and I started talking to, the first call was with my future manager. So a director of the team that I was working on, and he asked me questions that ranged from, do you know our competitors? Do you know how this workflow works? Have you seen a Kibana board? Would you know how to plan a sprint if suddenly the person that was supposed to plan the sprint is no longer here? These were questions that can range very simple SQL and technical questions to very honest questions. Like sometimes they just want to get things off their chest, and it's your time to field and become a fresh perspective on those questions. As of this point, I was just cramming, trying to get my school work done, stepping out of classes to take these calls because they were always in Pacific Standard Time, and I was always in class in Central Time. And finally, there was one call that was a serious technical screening. So this is going to be somewhere from an hour or 2 hours. And they're going to sit you down and put a Python or SQL interface in front of you, and then say, can you solve a series of questions in SQL? Great. Can you solve a series of questions in Python? They'll be asking about space complexity, time complexity. It's very simple things that you can crack the coding interview with. In FAANG companies, these questions will come up. If you're working for a less technical data science role, like in Facebook, they might actually ask you more business-related questions. But you should still prepare because you'll be having multiple processes happening at the same time. So by the time I was finished with that process and received the offer, this involved like a virtual onsite, so like 8 hours talking to person after person after person. I was able to get 3 offers, and the FAANG company was the obvious choice. I think Tina made a very similar choice, going for the company with the most notoriety. I think that's a good choice for your first time out because that's the clout that you will be able to lean on for all future opportunities. I never answered the question of how it's differed from hedge funds, so very different. In a hedge fund, I was the data mom, right? I was the person that had to clean up messes. I was the person that had to patch up pipelines, and all the outsourced projects that they originally had contractors and consultants do, they suddenly said, hey, we need gross merchandise volume estimated for Latin America like tomorrow. And so there was very few data processes and count and schedules that were in place to protect data scientists like me from, not messing up or not having enough time. At this larger company in Silicon Valley, this is not the status quo. The status quo is making sure that you have everything you need to do a very specific task. So you become basically a surgeon, whereas originally you were maybe an ER orderly.
I like that analogy quite a bit. And I will say, I think you are the first, if not one of the first people who I've interviewed or talked to out of probably 50, 60 people who has gotten a job from a resume drop. I think that's, I was talking, there's an interview I have coming up with the people over at, with Jeremy over at Sharpest Minds, and he talks about some of the numbers for just getting an interview. And I won't spoil it now, but it's a very low on a resume drop. So kudos to you. What do you think set your resume apart that they would want to contact you or at least bring you in for the next couple of conversations there?
So I very recently collaborated with Data Professor and walked through the primo Silicon Valley resume on his channel. I couldn't possibly explain all the elements that goes into a successful FAANG-worthy resume, but that has a lot of good tidbits for getting your resume in shape. Seeing your resume, your resume is very like designed.
It would not, I don't recommend anyone copy my resume. My resume now is just a figurehead. I want it to look pretty because I'm not planning. I mean, if I was actually applying to jobs, I'd probably take my picture off it first.
Yeah.
But I don't believe it's optimized well at all for any of the screening systems that they use. So that's definitely something that I will link to that video 100%. I love the Data Professor. I'm so happy you guys were able to collaborate as well. Tune into that after we finish this interview.
Yes, don't go anywhere.
So, as we've gone through this experience, as we've both learned more data science, it looks like we both started to do quite a bit of content creation. I found a home on YouTube. You're expanding your presence there. What got you excited about first making content, and how did you decide to really jump into it? I mean, I love your videos. I think you're a lot funnier than I am. That's something I would love to. I don't know. It's just that I feel like you have a very good YouTube personality. I am just a little bit drier, and that's okay. I think it works well with my brand. It's authentic to who I am. But I'd love to hear that story of how you got started in YouTube.
Coming from you, this is like, I would never expect this in a million years. I started on Father's Day of 2020, and I wanted to capitalize on the pun Data's Day, like Data's Day. So I actually missed my deadline, so I uploaded the day after Father's Day. That was my first video. The way that I got excited about content creation, like Tina said, was mostly creators like you. Someone who was able to relate the education in an incredibly clear and precise manner. Oftentimes, if you have to crack open a textbook, it's very difficult to get a hold of how much time you should be contributing to your own growth. The content that people like you, Ken G, create helps people pace themselves, helps people bring a textbook to life. Oftentimes, the content you create is how to navigate the data science world, not just the data science methods and theories. So that's invaluable, and you can't really get that from an article or a textbook.
You don't have to say it, but I know the reason. I think this is Tina's reason as well, is they saw me making videos. You saw me making videos, and you're like, I could do it better than that guy.
No.
I'm kidding.
No way.
No, that's why it's fun though. I think that everyone who I've spoken to, all of the data science creators out there on a video platform, we all have very different ways of going about it. I don't think anyone makes videos of like similar style to how I make them. I don't think anyone makes videos of similar style to how you make them, or how Tina or KNN or Krish or Deval or Import Data or any of these people, which I think is fascinating. I love the concept that people can get different perspectives from different people who had different life experiences on the same field. Because what I've learned is going to be a little bit different from what you've learned, without a doubt. And your experience, for example, working in Silicon Valley, which I do not have, and I make very clear, I will never tell people, specifically how to get a job in Silicon Valley. So I will in my course, but that's because I've talked to quite a few people who have been working in Silicon Valley and interviewing there. I would never do it without having consulted those other people, because that is not the experience that I've had. So it's one of those things where I think it's a really beautiful ecosystem, and I would encourage anyone watching to, listen to a bunch of the different creators. If you like hearing someone else or their perspective better than you like mine, that's fine. If you like multiple perspectives, great. But just like choosing courses, choosing learning materials, you should find the creators or the resources in general that you find resonate most with you and your experiences. So I think that there's just a really fun and kind of like wholesome element here that I can't stop talking about it. I really like it. I've had so much fun with this whole experience. And as I've said before, one of the best parts of this is just meeting creators, meeting other people, meeting data scientists like yourself. So
always be plugging. You guys out there, make sure you go buy Ken's course. It's awesome. It's awesome.
As you've seen in my video, only buy it if it makes sense for your situation exactly. Do not buy it just because you like me. Well, I mean, you can if you really want, but if that's the case, only buy it if it's on sale. So I love what I love about YouTube, what I love about data science is that there's this great storytelling element. We've talked a little bit about that, but I would really like your perspective on how important that is in the data science career, and also how maybe people can improve on that. That's something that I haven't touched on is, okay, you should do this 100%, but I've never been like, you should do this to improve how you tell stories or improve your relatability to other people.
Data storyteller and data artist, I thought was like a creative and custom thing for me. And then suddenly everybody's LinkedIn is starting saying data artist, data storyteller. I think it means something when it comes down to the idea that people are data points to an analyst, a data engineer, and a product manager. But that is like a very two-dimensional way of understanding how to best run your business or best reach the people that mean so much to you. For Kenji and creators like myself and you, it's making sure that you are fully like receptive and asking for feedback, and a story that drives a concept or a piece of advice or a listicle is paramount in making that connection. People's brains since the beginning of time have been based on a start, a middle, and an end with a protagonist and some sort of conflict. I think while a board meeting may not have enough room for all of those elements, if you don't come at a problem, any kind of problem, from making a YouTube video to solving $1 million solution, I think that you are approaching it wrong. I think that every single solution and answer should come from that idea of telling a story.
Well, I remember from one of my other interviews with, I think it was Ray, about how he got his first data analyst job. He said something that really stuck out to me, that everyone is the hero of their own story. Mm-hmm. Right? Everyone that watches my videos, I would hope that I'm just a small part of their story of becoming a data analyst, a data scientist, achieving their goals in that field. And when you think of it that way, I don't think storytelling is all that difficult if you're thinking about, okay, I'm just a small part in the success of this company, but I can play a pivotal role in it, or whatever that might be. How do I tell the story where I'm a supporting character that creates a tremendous value so the main character can have success? It's just like a very fun and a little bit different concept. We don't think of things from other people's perspectives enough. I mean, the idea of empathy, and I think that that's a pretty unique way, and that ties in really well with exactly what you're saying about the storytelling element. So at the end of the interviews, I open up the floor. You're allowed to talk about anything you'd like. You're allowed to plug your own stuff. and tell me what's going on in your life.
Sure. So this is a good chance to say that I really look up to YouTubers like you. On my channel, I'm going to dive into the secrets of Kenji. So making a very lighthearted attempt at cracking into the mysterious man, the data science man on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're interested in understanding a little more about what makes Kenji tick, that is going to be on my channel. While you're there, it would mean a lot to me to subscribe. I've been interacting with a ton of people on the 66-day challenge Discord from all over the world. So the long-winded answer I gave you to why create content the way I do is to be like you one day, to be able to connect so many different kinds of people and listen to their stories, and then use my stories to help teach more complicated and difficult to access projects and topics. But the 3 videos I'll probably plug is if you don't want to look into data science like a textbook anymore, I'm creating a 21-day data science $0 Bible with help from Data Professor that is going to be on my channel, how you can basically commit somewhere between 5 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour a day into becoming a data scientist in 3 weeks, at the very least taking the first step. And the other videos I would pitch would be the Dis or Data series that I have. It's comparing pandas and SQL, it's comparing Tableau and Looker, it's comparing the different elements that make up a data scientist's toolkit and repertoire, and making it make sense to anybody, even people who have never heard of those specific tools before. Finally, I would want to say thank you for supporting data science creators like Kenji, like myself, Data Professor. These people I've really looked up to. One day I'm hoping to be able to not only educate, but also pivot into making content that people would just want to relax to and be able to relate to, understanding exactly how to come into Silicon Valley and have enough time with a full-time job in data science and make content at the volume that I'm making. I think that would be a goal for everyone.
Awesome. Well, I'll link all of the resources you talked about below. Hopefully your 21-day data science Bible is something that people could use along with the 66 days of data. You know, that could be your first 3 weeks of the 66 days of data or something. That sounds to me like a perfect kickstart. A lot of people are asking, hey, what exactly should I work on? To me, there you go. It's 5 to 30 minutes a day. Go through it, and that is a perfect marriage like that.
Yes.
I will say thank you for all the kind words about myself. You know, I would hope, or I really believe, you know, I don't think I'm anything special. I'm just a little bit further down the creator road than a couple of the other creators out there. You know, I think that anyone who's interested in data science can have the amount of growth that I've had if they break it down into just a little bit each day. You know, there's Rome wasn't built in a day, and you know, I'm so grateful for all of the individual subscribers that come in each day and each week and each month and now each year for the last, I guess I've been doing this for around 2 years now. So thank you again for tuning in. I think everyone will really get quite a lot of value from your story and hopefully a little bit of entertainment as well. So
Thank you, Kenji.
no problem. I will talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.